I heard someone say 2 pumpkins. 2 pumpkins. But there's also that there is an island off of North Carolina where they have full-on Scottish accents.
Really?
To this day, as we speak, they speak in a full Scottish brogue just off the coast of North Carolina.
Oh, I gotta go there.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. It's cheaper anyhow,
North Carolina, where are you going? To Scotland Island?
Scotland, Carolina.
Enter if you dare this ghastly conversation of teens fraught with despair and recent lacerations. Final girl, chase after her, don't let her get away. But first, the Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA.
Welcome to Slumber Podcast Massacre with TNA. That's Tim.
That's Andy.
And this is a podcast about horror. Every week, Tim and I are going to get together on the Zuma studio and talk about a different film in the horror genre, from your well-known classics down to that rare gem resurrected at the back of your video store shelf. Tim, this week we're going to be talking about, I'm going to give you the stylized title, Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6.
Mm-hmm.
Tim, question for you. Which Jason do you prefer, Unstoppable Human or Unstoppable Reverend?
Ooh. Boy, that's awesome. That's a great question. It's funny. I as the Unstoppable Human, well, let's ask ourselves this question. At what point did he stop being a human?
Yeah. I would say at the end of 4.
At the end of 4? Okay.
Yeah, that's
and I'm glad that's what you're going with, because
not to say he has human properties in his, longevity and eternalness.
Yeah, he's an unusual kid in 3 and 4. I mean, there's something going on there, somewhere.
Right. He's resilient as a human. I'll say that.
I have to say that I really like the power that he has in 6. Of course, we'll talk loads about this, but the fact that he's now sort of powered by lightning, that sort of gothic Universal Monsters, universal energy source that apparently can bring anything back to life. It's certainly, you don't have to ask a lot of questions anymore. Like, oh God, is that cop going to kill him when he shoots him? Like, no, he's not going to do a damn thing to him. He's just going to come at him that much harder. So no, I kind of like that unstoppability. I got to say, if I'm going to give a gut answer, I like an unstoppable Jason.
Nice.
How about you?
I agree. I do here's the thing. I do like the Jason in 6 as the Unstoppable Revenant. It's a word I just learned had a different meaning than a guy stuck in winter. It's like a ghost who haunts, it's back for revenge. However, I feel it loses its palpability, I guess, or its impact after this movie.
Oh, yes.
As a whole of chunks, like 2 through 4 as human Jason, and then 6 to Eternal as Revenant Jason. I prefer the human Jason. But in this very specific instance of Jason, far prefer. Love him. Love Jason in this movie. Because he's the one out, he's out to revenge his murder now.
Right. That is,
I'm almost rooting for him.
I'll tell you what, this is one of the most simple and exciting realizations that you can have about the Friday franchise. When you start watching Part 6, there's a moment where it dawns on you, you realize, oh, Jason is dead. Like
Right.
it's over. He's not going to kill anyone else. We're safe. We are completely safe from Jason Voorhees until sweet Tommy Jarvis has got to handle some issues.
Yeah, it's like Jason is a scab and Tommy Jarvis is me, and he cannot leave that thing alone.
Oh, but it's kind of funny, like, because for all the years in the franchise leading up to part 6, you just thought that, you know, it doesn't matter what happens. He just keeps on coming. But yeah, very much at the beginning of part 6, we are at peace.
Yep.
We have solved our Jason problems.
Well, let's get into that. So this is Friday the 13th, part 6, Jason Lives, or stylistically reverse it. Written and directed by Tom McLoughlin, something like that. From 1986, it stars Tom Matthews as Tommy Jarvis, Jennifer Cook as Megan Garris, and CJ Graham, and we'll throw Dan Bradley a bone here, as Jason Voorhees. He kind of got recast mid-shoot. That's fine. And this is interesting. A budget $3 million, box office domestic $19.4 million, worldwide box office also $19.4 million.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think they released this anywhere.
Not very wide, is it?
Not very wide. And we'll put this at the top of the episode. It does pass the Bechdel-Wallace test, as Sissy and Paula are talking about a card game in one scene.
Oh, nice.
I think there are other instances, but that was like the one I was like, okay, good.
No, you're right. That sticks out. Yeah. No, that's great.
But so this is part 6 in the storied franchise. It's crazy to think how quickly these were pumped out, and now it's been 12 years since we've had a Friday movie, and even longer since we've had an original, because that was technically just a reboot of, it was like a remake of 2, essentially.
Yeah, leave it up to all the lawyers out there to muck things up for the rest of us and tie it up in the courts for forever. But yeah, unfortunately, because of a series of legal issues, which basically I'm no expert on it. I haven't followed the case, day by day, but it essentially boils down to intellectual property. Who really owns Jason? Is it the person that wrote the script for the first film? Is it Sean Cunningham, who directed the first film? There's been a lot of arguing back and forth as to who really has the rights to that. And of course, that all boils down to money too, and who gets the most money or any money at all. But it appears as if they have sorted most of that out. So
really?
I think, yeah. And just recently, I mean, we're talking within the last handful of weeks.
I saw Clive Barker just won back the rights to Hellraiser.
Well, thank God for that.
Thank God. More Hellraiser movies.
Yeah. I wonder if he's going to keep making them in Romania.
I can't wait for it to become huge again. And we're just going to, with egg on our face, like,
I feel so bad.
Yeah, we always loved Hellraiser.
Yeah, I feel so bad that we rip on Hellraiser, but fuck that. I had high expectations and they were dashed. So I love Clive Barker. I love absolutely Clive Barker, and I love his.
I'm nervous about revisiting some of his other stuff I like Nightbreed, and there was another one. I can't remember what it was called. But yeah, I really liked a couple of his other works, and now I'm like, am I just gonna watch him and be like, you dumb kid?
I'll hang out with him, I'll go have a beer with him. I mean, that's cool, just as long as we don't watch Hellraiser.
Yeah.
But but no, this you're right. This was a storied franchise, and the thing is that it was literally a license and a machine to print money for Paramount Pictures. It gained in popularity year after year. They were able to make, you had the beautiful combination of making a movie for cheap with limited resources, but also such an implied guarantee of monetary return. Yeah. So, you can bang out something quick, cheap, and easy, and you're going to make a pile of money off of it. It was just a shining example of a horror franchise's success if done with just, baseline quality, which I would put it above baseline quality. I think that there's a lot of horror franchises that did put out just bare minimum product. I think that.
I saw those.
Right.
The Saw movies.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, right. Good point. Friday, I think and I'm going to make a bold statement here just to amp up the excitement. And I'll probably kick myself when we actually cover the original Nightmare on Elm Street, but Jason is my boy.
Sure.
That's my guy. I probably love this franchise more than any other horror franchise. And what I'm getting at here is that I really do think that the quality was pretty solid, at least for those first handful of films. And so, and the audiences thought the same thing. They were coming out every year until, well, no, I should say, including when Part 5 came out. In fact, Part 5 was actually monetarily the most successful Friday to date. But Friday, talk about Part 6 without talking a little bit about Part 5.
Yeah.
And obviously
Part 4. I mean, it's the end of a trilogy, essentially.
Oh, sure. And but Part
just
5,
weird. A trilogy in the middle of a full series. It's very odd.
I hope it goes beyond trilogy now that they've got their legal stuff figured out, because
Tommy will come back.
Oh, I'd love nothing more than to see Tommy Jarvis come back. That would be fantastic.
I don't know about if I agree with that, but we'll get into that. Keep going with what you were saying.
So Part 5 comes out and it is a smash at the box office, even breaking the records of its predecessors. It's doing really well, but there's a lot of fallout.
Also a smash to your intelligence, that movie.
Right. Because there's two problems with Part 5, and only one really gets talked about, but I think it's the second biggest problem. The second biggest problem with Friday the 13th Part 5 is that it's not actually Jason Voorhees who is the killer. Now, everybody's going to tell you in interviews or any articles that you might read that was the big reason why so many fans kind of turned their back on the franchise, or at very least just disliked Part 5. I'm going to tell you that the number one reason is because Part 5 isn't that good.
No, it's terrible.
That's the fact of the matter.
It's insane how that movie is bookended by two of the best. I'm sure we could talk all day. They both have like their huge pros and tiny cons, 4 and 6, and then you've got this stink ass turd set in the middle of them. It is so bad. Like I had never seen it too, and I watched it not too long ago during COVID, and goddamn, like, and you watch it and it's like, oh, it's because like the kills aren't very violent. They're not very violent in 6, not at all. Like the ideas of them are, but they don't show a lot of violence or gore. There's blood splatter, but I don't know. There's just it was done well in 6. Just everything they did in 5 is done horribly. It
was not a pleasant shoot. The lead actress apparently was a real prima donna. They were
get over yourself.
Right. Yeah, exactly. For no good reason, by the way.
Although, after she was like, I'm in the most successful Friday the 13th movie. Yeah.
Damn it. Can't win. But yeah, so 5 happens. Audiences come out in droves. They're not happy with it. And now comes the top brass. I mean, the absolute top executives at Paramount Pictures. And they go to Frank Mancuso Jr., who we've mentioned before as being sort of the franchise leader of the Friday the 13th films. And they go to him and they say, you fucking fix this, and you fix it now. Because, you just laid an egg with Part 5, and you have got to get this franchise back on track. That's literally what they told him. You have to get Friday the 13th back on track. So he goes to a guy by the name of Tom McLoughlin, who he knew from, I think he had only directed one movie at that point called One Dark Night. But Tom McLoughlin was a super talented guy, pretty well known in LA for being a comedian and also a mime. So people hadn't completely turned their backs on mimes. Yeah, he ran a real successful mime outfit, I guess you would say, in Los Angeles. Very, very popular and super talented. In fact, a good chunk of your performers in Friday the 13th Part 6 come from his mime troupe, especially the paintball scene, all mimes.
Get out of here.
Seriously, yeah, all mimes and actors, but they were all friends of his from the mime troupe. And so,
That's great.
They bring in this young guy, and it was exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted somebody young. They knew they had to revitalize the franchise. They kind of left the storyline up to Tom, and it went through a couple origins, because while 5 was a failure, at least by audiences standards and fan standards, they still were contemplating the idea of continuing the characters and the storyline of part 5 as they move into part 6. The biggest detour to that was that the actor who played Tommy Jarvis in part 5 decided that he was going to go on to other things.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah, right. It is all a huge favor.
My God.
And that, so they were going to bring along his character, and also
because we should say at the end of 5, it's implied now, like their whole implication was Jason is an idea, and it's now passed into Tommy Jarvis, and now like it sets up in 6, Tommy Jarvis is going to be Jason.
Right. And they do.
And then they were just like, that was a dream.
Yeah. And they do a good job of, like, I think pretty seamlessly. Because I'll tell you, as a kid, when I watched part 6 for the first time, it seemed to flow for me. Like the fact that Tommy puts on the hockey mask at the end of 5 and there's some spooky music or whatever, I don't know. I didn't really necessarily believe that he was going to run out and start killing people. So when 6 opens and we have Tommy, he's pretty age compatible, even though we're talking about a different actor now, but pretty age compatible. And he is kind of he's left a mental health facility. So it just took the very basic pieces of connecting 5 to 6 and then just went with its own film after that, thankfully.
Yeah. And, should we do Nan Sum real quick before we get?
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah, we're going to keep on going through it if we don't.
Okay. Yeah. This is Nan Sum. Tommy Jarvis returns to the grave of Jason Voorhees to cremate his corpse in hopes of stopping his constant nightmares. Unfortunately, due to a brewing storm overhead, Jason is reanimated from the dead by a bolt of lightning and sets out on a new mission to kill Tommy Jarvis. Meanwhile, Tommy is arrested and his warnings are ignored by the local sheriff, who doesn't want the nightmares from the past brought back into light. With the help of the sheriff's daughter, Megan, Tommy must fight back to save the nearby campers from another repetition of history and to end Jason's reign of terror once and for all. That's Nan Sum. And something I real briefly noticed, I was actually listened to our People Under the Stairs episode with Nancy, and she was like, I still don't understand what's happening. So I realized I don't think Nancy pays attention to the sum at all. So, but I'm going to still keep doing it.
And it's hers, for God's sake.
It's hers, right? Was there something confusing in the People Under the Stairs? No, it's a very straightforward film. Anyway, my gripe for the day.
And hopefully people have seen this movie. That's what I'm excited about. I hope that people out there have seen Friday the 13th part 6, so they can get even more out of this episode. Yeah. But by all means, if you have not seen it yet, you need to run out and do that right away. Right. But chances are you're familiar with a guy that wears a hockey mask and he's upset about things. And
if you haven't seen it, I mean, there's not a lot that's going to be spoiled in this. There's not a lot of twists. There are no twists in this. There's no reveal.
Only head twists.
Yeah. A great one.
Yeah. But no, so they start out and we've got a new guy at the helm. And the cool thing about
which he had done Return of the Living Dead by now, right? That was 80.
Well, if we're talking about Tom Matthews, yes. We have two Toms here. We have Tom the director and Tom Matthews.
Okay,
the actor. But just to kind of get this particular story and the sort of tone of this movie, Tom McLoughlin is a big fan of Universal monsters, the old black and white Dracula, Frankenstein, Wolfman, kind of those traditional Gothic horror movies of the 40s and 50s. And so he wants to bring some of those elements to the Friday movies. He also despite being really energetic about the project, wasn't overly familiar with Friday the 13th as a franchise. He had seen maybe a couple of the movies. So he went to Paramount and a private screening and watched parts 1 through 5 and, tried to think of the things that were missing, tried to pinpoint the things that he did like, to really kind of make a complete, fun, exciting package, because he knew the weight that was on his shoulders, which was essentially to resurrect this franchise,
right?
And also Jason. So that's where we get all the great stuff that I personally love. We get graveyards with fog. We get lightning resurrection. We get, stormy, windy conditions. And a
monster outside the window.
Right. I mean, it's all of those like basic old school traditional horror ingredients wrapped up into these, the feel of a modern slasher. So that's what makes it so great from the get-go. But I know that you're a big fan of this movie, as am I. And I just want to say real quick, I'm super excited to talk about it, not only because it is the movie that it is, but also because it is our year anniversary.
Boom. It's a big celebration.
It is.
I even took a shower beforehand just for this.
Wow. Yeah. I'm going to get 8 hours of you on this.
I combed my beard out. I want to look good.
You do. Yeah. You look great.
It's been a whole year. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And this is only the second Friday movie we've covered.
Yeah. How did that happen?
I mean, I'm going to guess we probably won't cover many more.
No, not too many.
1, maybe 3. That's about all I can say.
Right. But it's kind of a funny year to be talking about horror in general because of the virus and because, it's not a real fun year by comparison to other years of humanity. But at the same time, I also think in a way it's also a perfect time for podcasts because there are a lot of things that people might otherwise be doing that maybe they have a lot more free time because they're not doing those things and they can sit and listen to us and join in on an awesome conversation.
I hope so.
Well, this one's going to be awesome. If you thought that others in the past haven't been awesome, this one will be, I promise you, because we love this movie and we're super stoked and I can't wait.
Do we have an episode? Let's just ask do you have an episode we've done where you're like, that one was not good?
It's funny. I
hope no one listens to this one.
I have some that I like more than others, but a lot of it pertains to the movies themselves.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
obviously I like it more if I like the movie. The one movie that we really hated, The Burning, the one that we just shit all over. I still really liked that episode because we had so much fun being pissed at that movie.
Yeah.
So I even liked that one.
And the stuff was fun. I mean, it's fun to shit on a bad movie. So it's, I mean, that's why there are so many like bad movie podcasts and web, and YouTube channels, and it's very fun to shit on a bad movie.
Oh, yes, it is.
I can't think of any like ones that we did where I was just like, oh God.
Yeah, because it's all about, I mean, hopefully there's something interesting in any movie. Like, for example, I'm not the hugest fan of some of the newer psychological things like what am I thinking of? Those A24 movies.
Yeah, like The Lighthouse.
Well, not. I like The Lighthouse, but
that's great.
No, but like Midsummer and Hereditary. I think that they're super cool. I think that they're super well done, and I'm jealous of the artistry that goes into them. I think it's amazing. It's a flavor thing for me.
Sure,
it's not quite my flavor.
See, I think that's what's reinvigorated my interest in horror movies, which is crazy.
Well, it's a good guy.
I think that's what makes us a good pair. Yeah, that's right.
We got not the first time we played The Odd Couple. For those of you that don't know, Andrew and I performed an excerpt from The Odd Couple. I
believe we got an A+ on that excerpt.
I think we did. That was how many years ago now?
That was 1992.
Wow, that was a while ago. That was a good while ago. And yet still like 93% of the movies that we cover were still made prior to that time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, But no, here we are. And you had mentioned earlier, you mentioned Tom Matthews. This guy is an exciting actor for me to talk about because I really can't put my finger on why I like him so much, but I definitely do. He's not a guy that was a born actor. It's not like he came from some sort of famous acting family or anything. He was just sort of plucked out in Los Angeles, kind of aimless, not really doing much with his life, and did a couple of movies. And when I was younger and watching him, I still didn't know quite what to make of him because I have such a hard time with people who have like native Californian accents and believing anything that comes out of their mouths. Like, like a Brooklyn accent, like an East Coast tough guy accent, like that happened yesterday, right over there to my friend. You believe anything that comes out of somebody's mouth that speaks with an East Coast accent.
Yeah. But sincerity in there.
Yeah. But like over there yesterday, my friend was right over there and it happened. And like you just don't believe in that sort of valley.
I don't
accent.
care about the friend there.
Right. No, you don't. But so he kind of has, I mean, not to like a Keanu Reeves level, but he's got that sort of like Californian surfer boy kind of feel and look to him. But he also has like a very genuine focus and charisma. And in this movie, especially almost like a really believable concern. And I don't know. I guess there's just such a thing as some natural talent, but man, the guy is really likable in this movie.
Yeah, he is likable. I don't know if he's good. I'll say I don't dislike him in this movie. There are times where I'm just like, that's some pretty wooden line reading. Like when he's on the phone with Megan at one point. And I don't know, but it also seems like maybe that part was like, that's kind of just like some future exposition kind of shoehorned in and he just has to do it. It's a weird, awkward phone conversation where I don't even, we'll get to all that later, but I would just say that like that part stuck out to me as like, this feels bad. But you are right. He does give off a sincerity of like, if anything else, he does believe like Jason is coming. Jason is a threat. Like that part I all believe. Anything else he did, I was like, eh.
It's funny that you mentioned wooden. Tom Matthews now owns a successful construction company. And actually it's kind of funny, like sort of a hands-on dude. Like he admits he's not really, he was never primed, like I said, to be a performer or be an actor. It's just something he sort of fell into. But he does say that this part of Tommy Jarvis is the closest to himself of somebody that he's ever played, which is just kind of like a hands-on, straight-ahead guy. So maybe that's why the performance comes across so well. But he also did a really great job in Return of the Living Dead. Yeah, and he even
lucked into some like great parts in some well-remembered movies. That's for sure.
Right, but
let's talk about this graveyard at the beginning, because we haven't even mentioned yet. He shows up there with Horshack from Welcome Back, Kotter, which I felt so bad because he did this movie like, okay, I gotta get out of this Horshack shadow. I'll start in, do a fun like horror movie, and you can't watch it and then not go, hey, Horshack. Like, sorry, dude. Like, that's it forever.
Every single documentary that I have seen about this movie, every single person says Horshack. They'll say Tom Matthews and they'll call him by name, right? But they'll say Horshack. Like this poor bastard of an actor can't even get a mention in a documentary about a movie.
And it's and his part is okay. I'm like, he does fine, but there's nothing where it's like they brought that guy in because of what he could do, because of Horshack. It's just kind of this middling, like, hey, what if we took Horshack but didn't make him as memorable like that? And that's this guy, whatever his name is. I don't even know.
And he is kind of, even Horshack playing the role that he plays in this movie. The character's name is Hawes.
Okay.
Hawes he still kind of plays him with a little bit of ham. I mean, sort of overplays.
You can tell he was brought in for the comedy. Yeah, because he's like, okay, here's the grave.
Yeah.
let's go, you know.
Right. He's got, yeah, I mean, there's some fun comedic timing in there. But I'll tell you though, the one thing that I always use when I tell people for all the years since I very first saw this movie was that the one hook that I used to get people excited about this particular movie is the fact that Jason punches through Horseshack, punches through him. Like into the front, into the chest cavity, through and out the back with his heart in hand.
Yeah, which is the goriest kill of the movie. And I think it's intentional because it sets your brain up to go, oh, these kills are gory. And then the rest aren't, but your brain fills in the blanks, I feel like.
Well, let me let you in on a little something there because you're more right than you know, actually.
Story of my life, Tim.
These kills in this movie, while really inventive and oftentimes really funny, were also much gorier. And I've had the good fortune of seeing the full footage of the kills. And there are, I would say, almost every single kill in this movie was muted by the MPAA. They really put the censorship tape all over this movie. And I don't know why they went after it so much, but there are some really awesome kills, like, not to skip ahead, but just to give a couple examples.
Oh, yeah.
There's a police officer whose head is smushed, like Jason is basically like crushes his head, holds either side of his head. You actually see some of the brain pop out of the top when he cracks it. You don't see that in the finished version. When the three people in the paintball scene get decapitated all at once, you see you see the heads all go at the same time. You see the bodies collapse, the knees collapse all at the same time, but in a much more extended take, which was really well done, like extremely well done, but way too vivid. When the back break, one of my favorites, the back breaking scene.
Yeah.
Where a man, we'll go into this, all of these more later, but when a man is basically bent in half backwards the wrong way, the other. They made that, they just kept slicing frames out of that to where it's essentially a quick cut, but it's a real extended crack, like cracking, like a long extended scene.
See, everything I read was like, the director was like, yeah, they were expecting to have to fight against an X rating. And they were like, we don't have to. In fact, can you add more kills?
Well, that's the other thing that's interesting. You're exactly right. Not only did they add extra kills, which are
terrible.
The first, which one's
it's the caretaker and the couple.
Yeah. And you think if somebody says, they had to add extra kills in this movie, you're like, okay, well, you're kind of picturing the writing process or the storyboard process. But no, it was literally like the last frame of this movie was done. I mean, it was the movie.
Oh, yeah. They were like showing it to preview audiences. And he's like, wow, I think people love it, right? And they're like, they do. 3 more kills.
Right. And they made him
and he had 13 kills. Like he had put a lot of fucking thought and effort into this movie.
I know. And
studio execs.
And and his own wife was almost killed in one of the kills, by the way. And I mean, it was a real sketchy, like basically
his wife's in the beginning. She's in the Volkswagen.
Yes. And there is a kill where Jason takes, I think it's the same piece of wrought iron fence that was used to bring him back to life.
Yeah.
And he jams it through a car windshield. But if you go and look back at that scene, when the actor is slamming that rod through the windshield, because of the curvature of it, sort of deflects it and changes the trajectory of the spear. And it's supposed to go in one direction and it kicks over about 8 inches from where it was supposed to go and just missed impaling his wife. So who played the actress in the car. And not to mention that poor thing was hanging on for dear life in the second half of her kill too, because they had her dead in a mud puddle. Like you see her body, but her head is underwater. And they had a scuba oxygen regulator on her mouth, but they didn't realize that regulators don't work in the mud. And she was basically like breathing mud into the back of her throat. And thankfully they yanked her up real quick. But yeah, just a couple exciting stories there from the set.
Do you know about the joke story in there? Like the joke that he intentionally filmed?
The American Express
card. Yeah. Because she tries to offer Jason some money and an American Express card, which was huge. Like the marketing for American Express was a cultural phenomenon in the early 80s. The Never Leave Home Without It, and I think it peaked in in Batman and Robin Never Leave the Cave Without It, and then people were like, I'm throwing away my American Express credit card. But so she dies, and she like kind of lets go of her money and the credit card, and so this American Express card is just floating on top of the water, and he lingers on it purely for the intention of he knew someone in the audience would yell, "Don't leave home without it," and get a huge laugh. And he's like, every time I saw it, that's what would happen. And he's like, that's the only reason that's in there like that was to prompt the fucking audience to be disruptive and get a laugh.
Right. And then the funny thing
is great.
It is great. And when you know that it's your job to get people excited about a franchise again, then yeah, throw a scene in there where you're going to have some dipshit who's drunk in the back row, like yell something out at the screen. I mean, it's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
And you know what, that particular kill, and I know I really don't mean to jump around a lot with this movie, but it's just, you can't help it when you're
going to. I also don't know what time I started the timer, so it's an anniversary show. Who cares?
We're going long.
We're going to jump all over. Buckle in.
You mentioned prior to her pulling out that American Express card that she's offering Jason money, and there's something that I really, really like. It's the briefest of moments, but when she's offering him money, now we as audience members know that money or credit cards means absolutely nothing to Jason Voorhees. Right. But so knowing that, but seeing her like basically pleading for her life, it's kind of a nice little affecting moment there. Like you really feel sorry for this poor lady. Like,
yeah, you don't get people bargaining with Jason that often.
Right.
A lot of pleading and stuff, but she's like, okay, how about this? Maybe this will work.
Right. And she's got like at least $40 in cash there and some credit cards. So it's a pretty good haul for 1986.
We should say the kill before that. Something I like about this movie, a lot of the kills are hilarious, and maybe it's because they've been pared down to where they're not as gory, but yeah. So the guy that this girl's with, character name Lisbeth, not Elizabeth, Lisbeth, and she's with Darren, who's played by Tony Goodwin, who's kind of he's an actor, I think he's the bad guy in Ghost. That was like his big moment, and then he's had his moments, but yeah, he gets out. He's the typical, like, he's got the concealed gun because he can't wait to be the fucking hero and like run out with his gun, which has no effect on Jason. Jason impales him with this spike and then just like pitchforks him over his shoulder and just sends him soaring. It's so funny because the camera angle's down low. Like normally would be like maybe from the behind of Jason and you see him come over him, but it's just this low shot and he just fucking chucks him up out of the screen. It's so great.
Yeah, when you just see his body like soaring back behind Jason, it's hysterical. You're right.
Jason, it's so nonchalant the way he just does it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of like, it almost looks like it feels good. Like he's just doing a good stretch, like just tossing him back there. Right. And it's funny. You mentioned that you never really see people pleading or bargaining with Jason. It's another really, really singular, interesting thing about this movie in particular is that I don't know if there was another Friday movie prior to this that just references Jason as much as this movie does. These characters, usually in a Friday movie, there's like, the head counselor around the campfire telling the tale of Jason or whatever. And everybody else is kind of, they're not familiar with the story or the legend.
Well, you also got to remember, technically parts 2 through 4 take place over like a 48-hour period.
Yeah, right,
There's not a lot of time for word to get around.
That's very true. But here in this movie, we have our characters aware of Jason, talking about Jason. And now I don't want to make an unsubstantiated claim because I didn't really think this all the way through. But I'm pretty sure that as an audience member, we get the most time alone with Jason in this movie. Like, there aren't usually, like, when you see Jason in a scene, in a Friday the 13th scene, it's usually because he's like stalking or attacking, like very, very actively attacking somebody.
Yeah.
And he pops out from somewhere and he kills them. But in this movie, we get just a lot of Jason.
Yeah,
Sometimes
like
he's standing there,
kind of walking through, sometimes he's got to walk through the woods to get to where he's going.
Yeah, but we get him on top of the RV in that great, cool great scene. We get him looking at the RV that people are having sex in, and he gives that little dog head tilt to the side because he doesn't really understand it. We get some just nice moments with him, and that kind of takes me back to something that you mentioned earlier about this movie, where Dan Bradley was originally cast as Jason, and he was a well-respected stunt coordinator. He was the stunt coordinator for the movie, and he was going to play Jason. So they're filming kind of the daytime shots, and they get the dailies over to Paramount, and Paramount comes back very urgently.
He's the body that comes out of the grave, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. I
think so.
Well, I think he might be. He's certainly like in the paintball scenes, like mainly the daytime stuff.
Oh, okay.
So you see him, and Paramount sees him. The executives want to see the dailies, which is basically like the sort of unedited rough footage that is shot during the day. And some people like to look at dailies, some people don't. But the studio execs usually do because they want to make sure that they're not making an awful product and that they're not wasting their money. So they're looking at the dailies, and they go back to Tom McLoughlin, and they're like, sorry, Dan is out as Jason. He needs to be replaced. And I don't mean to make fun of this, but it was basically that he had put on a little weight.
Is that what I thought it was? Because he just wasn't.
No, he was a little chunky.
Oh, okay.
He was a little little had a little bit of a gut going on. He looked a little hippie, as it had a little wide in the hips there.
Right.
And that just was not doing it for Paramount. So they said, we're going to bring in this other guy who was virtually inexperienced completely at acting. And his name is CJ. I don't have CJ's last name.
Morgan? CJ Graham. Sorry.
But CJ was this young, good looking, and very big man. He was like
a Marine.
Yeah. Very, very athletic build, and was imposing. And I guess it kind of makes sense because, like you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, we're talking about not just the human Jason anymore. We're talking about this sort of, otherworldly figure now that has strength that goes beyond humanity.
Yeah, because let's we'll back up real quick.
Sure.
Because we started talking about the graveyard, and we've talked about the pole he's got, but we never really talked about what happened with it.
Oh, yeah.
Real quickly, they dig up, Tommy's goal is to just burn the body so that he knows it's done forever. He opens it and he sees it and he's getting flashbacks, so he starts stabbing it with this metal pole, like a brace of a fence or whatever. And he leaves it in there and he goes to get the gas. Little touch I liked here. First, it gets struck by lightning. Then it gets struck again, flying in the face of the notion that lightning can't strike twice in the same place. So yes, it requires 2 bolts of lightning to resurrect Jason. I liked that little point. It is like a Frankenstein thing. It's very universal where, yes, that the electricity is what has brought him back to life. And they do a cool thing here. Because normally in the movies, I feel like, I'm going to put a little video game lens on it where it's like Jason's unstoppable. Once you get that mask off, now he's vulnerable. And that's usually when he's, he can be killed. At least that's what happens in 4. I guess that never really happens again. But that was my idea of it, sure. Or at least the mask is damaged in some way. Because that's in 3. He gets an axe in the head, but it also splits the mask. So in some way, the mask is like his power. In this, it's not. He doesn't even start with the mask. He puts on the mask a little bit later. Also forgetting he doesn't wear it in part 2, but you know what I'm getting at here.
I know what you mean.
Know what I'm getting at. For the real fans out there yelling. But in this, it's all about the eye. The eye is what opens. It's the most fleshed out thing on his body. There is one part later, because he's unstoppable. Nothing can stop him. And there is a weird part where the sheriff is pumping him with a shotgun, which does temporarily stop him, but I think it's just the actual force of the shotgun, not the shot inside of it. But he eventually throws down the shotgun and picks up his service revolver and shoots him. And he shoots him in the head. And you see Jason's head go back a little bit, and you hear this little squishy sound. And I think it's implied he got shot in his left eye. And that was the only thing that even gave him a little bit of pause of unstoppability, was that eye. And that's how it ends, is showing his still alive eye at the bottom of the lake. So I did like that. I felt like that was actually some effort going into building up this new Jason and maybe his new powers and vulnerabilities. Not that it's ever addressed in any of the fucking movies ever again, but for this one, I appreciated that.
No, you're right. And they did think that out, like, because if you remember, there's a couple times that he takes some pretty hard shots to that side of the head, but you're right. I think it's in 4 that he's sliding down that
right. Because his mask has been knocked off.
Right. And yeah, so if nothing else, even if you can't go frame by frame or movie by movie to say that the mask really does count as any sort of armor, it certainly feels that way. Yeah. Like when Jason is Jason when he has his mask on. And it's funny, like, it's kind of cool. Like I got to see the making of the mask for this movie, and they make it out of like it's like clear fiberglass, and they
don't just go buy a hockey mask.
Yeah, believe it or not, they get really specific with the sizing. And
I guess it has to look a little worn and weathered.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And but yeah, they did make mention of the eye and that vulnerability there. So yeah, there's something to that. And that, you're right, that shot, that service revolver shot that he takes really does kind of stifle him for a second.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's something to it. I'm with you on that.
Perfect. But yeah, so he's resurrected. So that's where the whole kind of zombie thing comes in. Because as you said in the beginning, he's fucking dead. Like, yeah, this movie is about a toxic asshole who won't shut up about his past and gets everyone involved in the bad choices he's made, and just gets everyone wrapped up in his drama. That's essentially what this movie is.
Basically, yeah.
If he just let it alone, everyone would have been fine. But he had to call his ex-girlfriend because he can't stop thinking about her. Now everyone's got to fucking deal with her.
It's actually, it is true. I mean, the world was safe, and then Tommy and his issues. Yeah. It's all about Tommy. But no, we would have
been saved from part 8. From space.
That would have been worth it.
Oh man.
Except for that boxer that gets his head like punched off. Like that was
only memorable moment in that movie.
But no, I personally, I love the character of Tommy. I love the mythology of Tommy. I've talked about it in a couple different episodes before. I think it's really successful, and it's believable, and it's interesting. And I think a lot of that credit goes Corey Feldman playing him as a kid and doing, while at times an annoying job, but also like a pretty spirited job of playing Tommy Jarvis. And it's an interesting character. And like we're talking about, Tom Matthews is giving a lot of good focus to the part. But what really attracts me about that whole scene that you just described in the graveyard is kind of back to that sort of gothic nature. Like you had the music, while taking in some of the themes from the previous movies, also adds a little bit more of that old-fashioned gothic sound to it. The composer, the same composer from all those years, I believe his name is
Martin something.
It's Manfredini.
Manfredini.
Yeah. And who, by the way, he was very impressed by this movie. Like he had worked on all the ones preceding this, but when he really saw what was happening with part 6, he's like, wow, this is like, we're making a real movie here, you know. And he was impressed with it. But
which you don't say about any part 6 that you're making. Like, no one is making a part 6 of something and being like, we're crushing it now.
Right.
Maybe Mission Impossible. Like, it's a very rare thing. Like when your 6th entry is like, oh, I'm taking notice.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. Is there? I mean, did they even bother with a Jaws part 6?
No, they got to 4 and said we've tapped it.
So if those people can even like stop themselves, then you know it's pretty amazing if you get to a 6 and it's good. But it is, and that graveyard scene is filled. Well, first of all, it's a graveyard. It's nighttime. The wind is blowing, and you mentioned the lightning. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned this because we're talking about 1986 here. It was filmed in January of '86 in Georgia, and the lightning effect is fantastic.
Yeah,
like I don't know how they did it.
Yeah.
But I mean, am I right? Am I wrong? That lightning looks great.
Yeah, because there are so many lightning bolts from 80s movies that were you're just like, that's a superimposed or it's not even lined up right, But no, they look great. They look great.
And so we now have Jason, and you're right. It's that great moment when he puts on that mask in the graveyard. Now he's kind of put his mask back on and he feels comfortable, and he does a nice little kind of quarter turn and then a full turn towards the camera. And you're like, fuck yes. Yeah. Like Jason is back, and it feels that way when you're watching.
It's like a wrestling entrance.
It is. Yeah.
It's Jason. He's coming in with the steel chair.
And then
King, it's Jason Voorhees.
Yes. Like if only he could have been doing like that Hulk Hogan, like really heavy aspirated breathing,
Right.
Like
there is that weird part where he's walking through the camp, like pointing at people and nodding. I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah. Carrying a 2x4 with the American flag on it, Oh God. But yeah, so here we have our Jason back, and even just to kind of like put an exclamation point on the end of that sentence, they cut to a really cute like James Bond opening where you see Jason slash at the
That is so weird. Yes, they zoom in on the eye, and you've got that shot of like as James Bond would do, where he's just walking profile and then suddenly turns. It's so weird. It's so funny and out of place, but it doesn't feel hokey. No. And I don't know how he did it. And there's so much in this movie where I recognize in a lot of other movies, I'd be like, that's fucking dumb. Don't do that. But in this, I love it. I love every stupid thing I should hate in this movie. I lap up.
You're right. My high water mark for camp is Airplane, the movie Airplane. Sure. Like that's about, I judge all other camp above and below that line. And you're right. They never, they dance on that line, but they never take it into Airplane territory where it's just so goofy that that it loses its edge. Because that's the thing, like a Friday movie still has to have an edge. And that's one of the biggest arguments that I have with myself internally when I try to decide which is better between part 4 and part 6, is that part 4 still was an early enough entry to retain that element of sort of danger. Like it feels dangerous, when you're watching it. And part 6, while it might not have as much of that edge, you're absolutely right. They don't goof around to where they lose the fact that we're essentially watching a killer. And so that you're right. I don't know how they got that recipe just right, but man, did they ever.
Yeah. Even some of the kids have some lines that are jokey and they don't always hit, but I give them a pass. There are the little subtle things. I think a kid's reading, like it shows all the little kid campers. Another thing real quick that I loved about this movie, yes, we had a young Tommy Jarvis in part 4, but like this movie has literal fucking campers that are at risk. Like Jason busts in to a room full of 30 children that he could easily slaughter. So
like 6-year-olds.
Yeah. Like there are some insane stakes in this one, like the highest stakes of any movie, of any Friday movie. but yeah, like the kids say stuff like, so anyway, so it shows all the kids sleeping, and one of them, they're holding like home photographs, and one kid's reading like Sartre's No Exit, which is like about being in like the waiting room in hell, essentially. So just little goofy stuff like that the film that Tom McLaughlin's just like, throw that in there. Of course, this kid's not reading that book, but that's hilarious.
Well, and you're right. And it's something that I think if I wanted to say it really concisely, it's this. I am shocked that this movie is not too long. Like they fit so much into this movie. I can't believe that it has a runtime of, I think a couple minutes shy of an hour and a half.
It is. Yeah. It's not even an hour and a half.
But I mean, you've got that paintball scene. You've got the whole ending scene at the camp. You've got the cemetery stuff. You've got the jail cell scenes. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how they fit it.
Yeah, it's crazy you say that because I was just kind of listening to it this morning while I was like researching and stuff. I just had it like playing on because everyone, you can get it free on Amazon Prime. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free to stream. So I just had that on the background in a window, and they're like getting to the camp, like Megan's driving Tommy to the camp. I'm like, oh, it's almost over. All right. I'm like, I'm going to go run and take my shower real quick. And I come back out of the shower and I hear stuff. I'm like, what is going on? And then I'm like, oh, like Tommy's on the boat now. I'm like, it's been like 20 minutes. Like I felt like once they get to the camp, it ends very quickly, but there's still a lot of stuff going on, but there's a lot of stuff before that. It's you're right. They cram so much into this.
And Tommy's on the boat and he's calling Jason a pussy. Like literally, like I got to throw that in there real quick. Like the only time that Jason's ever been called a pussy. That's true. I mean, it's kind of, it feels sort of out of place, especially how he says it, like, come on, you pussy. It's a great.
Tommy's pushing for a cabinet post. Can we
I thought you were making a reference. I thought you were making a reference to Tom Matthews trying to sell somebody on some cabinets for their
oh man.
Yeah, we can go a bunch of different places with that.
A lot of different places. But hold on. I want to talk about Tommy and Megan as a couple.
Oh, okay.
Because they're kind of introduced. Because Tommy resurrects Jason, gets away, and goes directly to the sheriff. And this is where we kind of learn that, people know who Tommy Jarvis is. Like the sheriff's like, I know that you were locked away. They're like, we've changed the name of the fucking town to Forest Green, which there's a part where they like make sure Tommy leaves town, but it says now leaving Forest Green County. I'm like, did they change the name of the county? That's how bad Jason Voorhees. But anyway, so he just locks him up. He's like, listen, you probably escaped from somewhere. I'm putting you away until I can like deal with you properly. So now the sheriff's daughter and her friends show up because they're counselors at the camp, former Camp Crystal Lake. And Tommy's like, they're just talking, and Tommy from the back cell is like, it's Jason. And the daughter immediately is like, what? And the dad's like, that guy's dangerous. And she's like, oh yeah, down to fuck. Like, I'm going to say this about Megan. I know that because Megan seems very carefree. She's always smiling. She doesn't take anything too seriously. But I feel it's too much, and she just becomes like just fucking oblivious. She just seems dumb at some, like there's so much. She's so carefree. She just seems oblivious is really what I'm getting at. Especially like immediately you're just like, oh, I'm going to help this guy I know nothing about who has I do know he has a horrible history, but I'm immediately going to befriend him. She helps break him out of jail like twice, essentially, or he breaks out once by himself. But just even though she ends up being right in the end, does not make her decisions valid in any way, because only in this movie do those decisions work.
Now, and you're right. And some, but I mean, I think this isn't a sexist comment to say that there is a time in a lot of, women's lives where, the more bad qualities or negative qualities that a man can have only for some strange reason makes him that much more attractive. Like, oh, you're a felon, you don't have a job, you still live with your parents, like, will you marry me? Like, I don't know what the attraction is, but there's that, it's that bad boy thing. And she falls for it. But you're right, I can say this,
but it is immediately like he says it's Jason and she's like, oh yeah, who are you?
And you're right.
Well,
and
that guy's crazy.
Yeah, right. Meanwhile, she's already like unbuttoning her jeans,
yes. And it's like she's so fucking obsessed with him that later she intercepts a call. He calls the police station. She's like, oh, it's me, Megan. Do you remember me from this morning? You met me. Like, they've had no other interaction, but she's fucking obsessed about him all day. It's all her friends talk about is this dude that she won't shut up about. Like, it's insane.
Well, I think they're in a real rural and isolated area, which might not have. But
if you're the sheriff, that is number one rule you drill in your daughter's head. Don't talk to the people in the cells or form relationships with them.
Yeah, don't talk to the people. Don't talk to the people where I work, ever.
Right.
But yeah, no, interesting. Now here's some interesting insights there. And you're right, because I do believe that it's a little bit of a sharp juxtaposition, because we either get Megan in one of three categories. She's either, just throwing herself at Tommy, or she's conversely really defiant with her dad, which I don't know, maybe those two go hand in hand.
Sure.
Or at the very end of the movie, she completely sort of drops all strength and just is like crying for her daddy for like the next 10 minutes of the movie. Now she does, really kind of come back around and actually shows quite a bit of strength, in that sort of final battle that she has with Jason. But you're right. Some of those, Megan as a character might be a little flawed. But I'll tell you the reason why I think that is. I think they had some good intentions. What Tom McLoughlin wanted was what he described as like a Barbara Stanwyck type character, kind of those ladies from the 40s and 50s movies, like Katharine Hepburn, kind of like with a snappy comeback.
Not with any guff.
Right. Yeah. Like you're not going to push me around.
And she seems that way.
Yeah. With her dad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially with her dad.
Right.
And like there's a part, but it's almost too far. Like there's a part where she's sparring with him and then like the red phone rings in the office, which I've always come to understand is an important phone, right? Like
right.
The phone, it's like a direct line probably. And she picks it up. She's like, sheriff's office. Oh, sorry. He's in the bathroom taking a piss right now. Or, she like even makes it more graphic. Though.
Right.
Like he said fucking work, dude.
Right. Yeah.
And she's just smiling about it. She's just like, here you go, Dad.
Well, you're really getting into one of the few problems that I have with this movie, and that is its final girl. Because what's really interesting about this movie is that without a doubt, Megan is our final girl. But there is another character by the name of, I believe we're talking about Paula.
Yeah.
And Paula has every single conventional quality of a final girl that you could ever ask for, except that she isn't blonde. But that's which is usually like, I mean, it's almost a prerequisite. But but she's not blonde, but she is nice, she is sweet, she is caring. She's innocent. I mean, she's virtuous. Like
she's always the one trying to figure out what happened to someone. She's she's always concerned. And you're right. If like Tommy Jarvis had not been about this and it was just a generic Jason stalks a camp, she's your final girl. Absolutely. Right. If you don't have this other relationship in it.
And what is so just gut wrenching, so to speak, about her character is that, and it's something that I also take some issue with. I'm over it now, but like there was a time in my life where this like genuinely bothered me. That this poor character who is so sweet, who is so nice, probably has, even though most of the action takes place off screen, probably the most brutal death in any of the Friday movies. I mean, Jason
Literal overkill.
literally paints the inside of a cabin with her blood. I mean, he kills her. There's this like big slash and a giant just jugular like money shot of blood that shoots up onto the window. And then he pulls her back in.
Well, yeah. You're forgetting. He then throws her through the window.
Yeah,
he kills her, then throws her through the window, then pulls her back in,
and then just mutilates the hell out of her to where there's essentially nothing left.
Yeah,
and so that was something.
The cabin looks awesome, though.
Oh yeah,
and the people who stumble upon that cabin, I love the reactions. It's great,
right? And the thing is like part of me wonders if maybe because Tom McLoughlin was trying to do something different with this movie, that maybe that was a bit of a conscious decision on his part to sort of quote unquote kill the final girl, kind of kill off that trope maybe, in favor for sort of like a Neo, more strong-willed, a little bit more restless type character to assign that responsibility to. I don't know if that's the case or not, but it is really odd that we are served up such a classic final girl and that we don't
She's
get
the
her.
sister of one of the victims already in the movie. Because she's Lisbeth's sister.
Oh, she is Liz. Yeah. Because they look like each other.
Yeah.
She actually,
dude, that's a funny part. Can I just say real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Because I had to go back to check. This is why I listened to it this morning, because I wanted to go back and check to see because when all the counselors first come into the sheriff's office, I'm like, do they mention that their friends are missing? Because they do. But when he gets the call that they're dead, he's just like, I gotta go. Like that's the call where the important line comes in. So It's not like, hey, your friends are dead. He's just like, I gotta go find your friends are dead. He doesn't even mention it. But later he does. Like someone else dies. He's like, listen. He gets very somber with them. But these two, where they're like, they are fucking slaughtered. He's just like, fuck, all right, I'll be back later.
Yeah,
like if you gotta tell your daughter, like, now it's getting serious. Listen to me.
Right.
Enough of your fucking around. Your friends are dead. And this dude. Everything points to this dude you want to nail did it. Unless you believe in zombies.
Right.
Which he was right, but it doesn't excuse her behavior.
And he try. I mean, but Lord knows as the movie goes on, he tries his best to he must say to her 6 different times, like, please stay the fuck away from that guy. Right. Please. Like, I'm begging you. I mean, none of it works.
No.
But yeah, poor Paula gets it so viciously. She reminds me a lot of a friend, a mutual friend that you and I have. I won't say her name, but she has like very distinctive pale eyes that we went to high school with. Okay. We also know her brother, but they have like these really, really. You know who I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. But no, she's a great character. But here's the thing. This movie.
You're just saying in looks, though. You're reminded. Okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So here's a neat thing. I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier about this movie is that for all of the characters and for a Friday movie, this movie does have a pretty decent size and width of ensemble characters that are thrown in. Some of them have
all memorable.
Parts. Yeah, they're all memorable and they're all pretty well acted. And a lot of that goes back
I will say, except for one whose memorable trait is the color of her skin. Like she's not written very well.
No, right. No, that's true. Yeah.
Everyone else is pretty, even the cops. You've got the bumbling assistant. You've got the guy who's like always fixing his hair.
Yeah.
Likes to look good, which I was like, his hair does look nice.
Yeah. He's got the, he's kind of
that tight, wavy,
bit of that mustache thing going on. He's got the swag. Fur on his jacket, like that nobody else has the fur on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Like everybody's great. We've mentioned it a couple of times. There is this kind of funny, goofy, really hysterical paintball scene just that basically racks up the body count.
Yeah.
But even those actors are funny and the bit is hilarious.
Yeah, because that part doesn't feel it seems out of place it doesn't feel tacked on like the one he had to tack on. Because when the studio's like, we need more kills, he ends up killing the caretaker and just this random couple out in the middle of the woods.
Yeah,
that feels tacked on.
It does.
But the paintball seems out of place. But yeah, those guys are so fucking funny. The shit they're talking about, the little guy who's taking it super seriously, the female exec who like bests them all, they're all so good.
And the little nerdy guy, the one that like, I mean, he is just, I mean, it's not fun to like watch somebody in peril like running for their life, but this guy makes it absolutely hysterical because he's so nerdy.
To that guy?
Well, he is the guy that they find his glasses in his body parts later on.
Right. Okay. That's right.
Character's name is Ray, and Ray gets chopped up. Yeah.
But I'd say pulled apart because that's kind of, I feel like Jason has this moment where, because someone runs at him with a machete and he just like, it's one of the paintball guys. Yeah. And he's like super pissed that a woman beat him. Why is a woman even playing paintball? Rightly so. Yeah, should have stayed in the kitchen. Like she belongs. Like it was written by Twitter today. But like, yeah, he charges at Jason with the machete, and Jason like yanks him with his own momentum and just sends him into another tree. And then Jason looks down and he's like, oh, I just ripped that guy's arm off. Holy shit.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I can't really remember him really ever dismembering anyone before. So it's like he's got this he's even stronger now.
Oh yeah. The strength is huge in this. And it's used
even where it bewilders him. Like it's this weird moment where he's like, what the holy shit? Did I do that? Well, cool machete. I love those.
And he's like, yeah, I knew I got the mask back, but I still felt like something was missing. It is nice. So he's got like a little utility thing that he wears in this one. He's got like a screwdriver in there, like a little utility belt.
Oh yeah. Knife, hunting knife on there.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's got a nice arsenal there. But these great characters keep on coming. I love the character of Court, played by John Travolta's nephew, literally. That's as soon as you see him, you're like, that's a fucking Travolta if I ever saw one. And that is John Travolta's, I believe that's his aunt's son, I want to say, because John Travolta's aunt was also an actress.
That'd be his cousin then, wouldn't it?
Or maybe his cousin. Or maybe it is. Okay, maybe it is his nephew. I believe it's his nephew one way or another. Okay. However that works
out. They're related.
You take one look at the guy and it's
yeah.
You don't have to push like the science of genetics that far to see like, okay, that's a Travolta.
Yeah.
But also like really funny. Like the character's name is Court. And he's kind of, a little dim-witted. He has this hysterical scene where he's talking like he's trying to just make up time until the head counselors get there. And so he's making up this bullshit story about natives and like a sign that a chief would give to his son when he was leaving his mother. And it's this pile of rocks. And it's just such bullshit.
He would knock the rocks over,
It's hysterical. He gets to be a part of the super awesome RV scene, which is, it's also worth mentioning. This movie has, for Friday the 13th standards, a very little, I'm going to say little sex. Certainly
no boobs. And I don't think he wanted to have sex and they made him do this because he was like, I want to avoid those tropes of like sin's immoral and you deserve to die for it.
Right.
And they were like, oh, please.
And they were pretty successful because even though there is a sort of extended quote unquote sex scene, I believe it might have been choreographed by somebody who wasn't overly familiar with what sex is.
I know. Because I was watching with my kid and I'm like, I don't feel uncomfortable. Like right. I just watching this is these like, two fuck around.
Right. But
because it's just kind of this. She's sort of she's on top, just kind of like swinging her shoulders. He's also doing that. There is a funny line where she's like, look, you got to hold out until the end of the song, right? And he's like, yeah, sure. Like how I can do that. She's like, it's only 10 more minutes. I'm like, oh, that's the nightmare of every woman who's dated a Fish fan. Like, just wait till this jam's over, babe. Like, no. But I do love Jason ends up pulling the power and then like they're like, oh shit, what happened? She's like, wait, did you finish? And he's like, well, yeah, that was like the end of the song, right? Like he just could not wait, like any excuse.
Just
that
an
was very
opportunist.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, but their sex is so weird.
It's very weird. And
she's pulling at his tank top rhythmically. It just looks odd. There's no passion in there. They're just kind of listening to music and having sex.
Yeah, it kind of looks like he's having sex, but it doesn't really look like she is. Like I don't know how they made that work, but
Tim, he's the best.
Yeah,
he's
right.
The best.
Yeah, she says that.
Oh, he's the best. You're the best.
Again, rural area, big fish, small pond. So, but yeah, they're in this RV, and we get a couple of one in particular, very, very cool kill. Where
my favorite one.
Court is very excited to be driving the RV, or like he says, he's never driven a house before. So he's driving the RV. You've got one of the 3 Alice Cooper songs playing in this movie, which we'll get into more later. And you have this really funny scene before the death scene of her sort of like lunging forward in the RV, and then Court will take off. He'll kind of gun the gas, and then she'll fall backwards.
Yeah.
And then
if you've ever stood up in a RV before, because it is like it's very off-putting if you've been in a moving RV, because you're just like, oh, I'm like on a couch, like I'm in a home. It's fine. And you act like you're in a home. And if that person steps on the brakes while you're up, you are fucked, dude. Like you are not ready for it. And momentum still works, So, but that's what's happening to her. Yeah. She's just pitching forward and backward, like the full length of the RV. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a full tumble into the bed in the back.
Yeah. It's a great moment. And we get a really nice, jump scare here. I mean, the scene's been going on, and it's kind of so enjoyable just from a physical comedy standpoint that you actually sort of forget about Jason for a second. And in the moment that you do, bam, he pops out of the RV bathroom, pulls her into it, and they're really tussling back and forth. But Court is so into the music and driving, and he's having the time of his life. And we get a super, super great kill. You said it's one of your favorites?
Yeah. And I think it's for the audio.
So, okay. Yeah. Go ahead and tell me about it then.
Okay.
Give me a breakdown.
Excuse me. It's, because real quick, a lot of the things I liked about the kills in this movie, they were, so to say, in your face. Because while they weren't gory, you have a lot of like these cool, like close up, like kind of angled shots of like the knife coming in, or, of something on the kills. And so, yeah, Jason's just like kind of like holding her. She's trying to get away. And he finally takes her head, and there's a mirror there. Now, mind you, I understand none of this would happen in this instance, but I still love everything that happens in it. Where he then shoves her face into this mirror, and you've got this quick shot of like her face coming right in at you. And now what normally would have happened is that would have shattered glass or whatever. They just kind of ignore that part, because you get her face coming in, and now you cut to the opposite side, and like the impression of her face comes through the wall, like in like Nightmare on Elm Street, when Freddy's coming through the wall, that kind of thing. Or if you've ever we did these like art projects in middle school where you would have almost like a sheet of like plastic or wax, and then you would get that warm, right? And then you would like just set text down, just like letters, like we would just do our name, right? And then you would set it on this machine, which would create a vacuum and pull the warm plastic down, and then would leave indentations of the letters that you've done, right? That's kind of what this reminded me of. Like, it looks like this just vacuum perfectly, going across her face. And it makes this really weird, like tin crinkling sound as it immediately cuts off her scream. So it's just this, I don't know, man. It just, everything about it just tripped everything in me, that I was just like, oh, brutal, yeah. But yes. It just sound, I just love sounds. I mean, so like, yeah. It's kind of like rare where you get a kill that's not some sort of squish.
Right. Yeah. It kind of gives you that same satisfaction as like chiropractic videos.
Yes.
Like people getting adjustments. You get that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
They filmed that shot in a cool way. The way that they got that effect was filming it in slow motion underwater. So her face is going into plastic, but because it's underwater, it sort of even accentuates the sort of vacuumness of the plastic pulling against her face. It also sort of smooths it out. And they film it at full speed with her face ramming into the plastic, but then they use the slow. It looks like it's just slowly
like resistance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and very, very cool.
And her face looks tortured. Like her face looks.
Yeah. Her mouth is open.
Yeah. Her mouth is open. Oh, it's so good.
And then, the next kill isn't as like visually exciting, but like you and I have said before, we're big fans of the knife into the brain.
Yeah.
And now it's not quite.
Well, I think this is a Jason character kill. Like the kill itself is nothing, but it sets up like Jason is just like, you know what? I'm going to kill this guy. He's going to crash this fucking car. And I don't care.
Right.
I'm going to get out and pose on top of it for a little bit.
Right. And it's going to look really fucking cool.
It looks so cool.
But yeah, we get a nice, like, I mean, every human being knows like the temple is a sensitive spot on the body. And to get a survival knife, like a serrated survival knife right into the side of your skull, like it.
I mean, at least you go quick that way.
Right. It's not quite as effective as our favorite skull kill, which is from, what was that movie? Oh, The Prowler. We love that the knife down through the top.
Yes.
We love that, but it's still very, very good, cutting in through the side. Then we get and this was actually the last shot of the film before they added in the extra kills. That RV accident where this RV fucking launches.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when it crashes, it launches.
I mean, you can see the little ramp they've built to launch, that the side wheel hits. I love it.
Yeah, it's not done with miniatures. Tom McLoughlin said that he was literally on his knees praying that the driver did not get killed, because they actually had a driver in there that just fucking launched that RV. And now I'm going to tell you something really awesome about this. There apparently was an accountant on this film, and his name is, I've actually got his name, and I thought it was really funny that they went ahead and like that everybody knows it's this guy. His name is, it is Don Behrens. Okay, so Don Behrens was an accountant. He worked on the wildly successful first Halloween movie, which is, as far as financial things go, is about as good as it gets. So this guy is the accountant for the film. Whatever he says goes, and everybody hates this fucking guy on set because he is just a nickel and dimer, which I guess is his job. But Tom McLoughlin would say that he'd show up, they'd have like a crane shot ready to go or some other like really well-constructed shot. They'd show up on the day of filming, and this Don Behrens would be like, nope, sorry, we cut that. You're going to have to do it, a different way. Jeez. And they even went to him, and they're like, Tom went to him and he's like, do you actually have a deal with Frank Mancuso where if this comes in under budget and on time that you actually get a bonus? And he's like, yeah, I do. And like just flat out admitted it. So funny thing is, back to the RV story of some of the pieces that they had around. Now, maybe you know what this is better than I do. I'm not much of a camper, but there's a thing called a swamp cooler. I think it's used in camping or something like that, but it's an expensive, like outdoor refrigerator system. And this one on set, they had a swamp, quote unquote, swamp cooler, and it was worth like $5,000. Uh-huh. And Don Behrens had made it known to everybody, like they told me I could have that when filming is done. Like, that swamp cooler is mine. Are you looking up swamp cooler right now? Okay.
It just looks like it's an air conditioner, though.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it is. Okay, maybe it's an air conditioning system then, or something like that. But either way, it's some kind of giant, very expensive refrigeration.
It uses moisture to cool air, so yeah, probably
right. And this accountant, this penny pincher, had already laid claim to that, and he's like, Mancuso said that I could have that when the shoot is done. So what did they do?
They put it in the RV.
They took that swamp cooler and they put it on top of the RV. and made it look like it was part of the RV. And then they just fucking launched that thing. And the first thing that exploded on the ground was that swamp cooler.
I gotta rewatch
"Fuck
that
you."
scene now just to see the swamp cooler.
Yes. Yeah. It's like this thing that it looks like, like kind of like some kind of storage compartment or like filtration system on top of the RV. And so
you're already getting a bonus. You're going to pilfer from the set.
Right. A prick. So yeah, they showed him and everybody, and the crew cheered and nice little anecdote there about the RV launch.
That's awesome.
But so
good.
So yeah, we're getting some super cool kills. Something really interesting about what I feel, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, we're talking about a big cast of characters here. We've said some nice things about Tom Matthews. I really think the guy that holds this movie together is the Sheriff Garris, who plays Megan's father and the sheriff.
Yeah.
A great guy. And the thing is, it's no small wonder. That actor, I've got his name somewhere.
He does not look like your typical sheriff. He looks like Mr. Noodles from
He
Elmo.
does. He totally does.
Rip that guy too. That guy passed away not too long ago. I can't remember his name right now. Yeah.
But yeah, so that actor actually is a pretty well-known acting instructor. In fact, he was Jennifer Cook, who plays his daughter.
Yeah.
He was actually her acting instructor in real life. So they knew each other and they had a nice like rapport and everything. But yeah, he is he's a fantastic actor. He the part of like a sheriff, like playing the heavy in these kinds of movies, you could say that stuff on autopilot and those lines are going to come out just fine.
Yeah.
But he really does a fantastic job of really bringing some sincerity to it. And he also delivers as a nice little nugget of trivia here. This is the second time that you and I have covered a movie that references somebody wearing their balls as earrings.
Wait, what was the first one?
First one is it's the anthology, A Creep Show.
Oh, Creep Show.
The like abusive wife, the verbally abusive wife makes mention of, the balls as
Adrienne
earrings.
Barbeau.
Yeah. So yeah, nice little full circle here.
Wow.
for the that's what we've all been waiting for, the year anniversary here and referencing a second balls as earrings line.
Looks like we've done everything we came to do.
Thanks, folks. It's been great. But yeah, no. So he delivers these lines that are a little, hackneyed, but he does it in a great way. Again, I think it all boils down to selling the sincerity of the role that you're playing. And he does a really sincere job with that. And you really get the impression that he cares for his daughter and, is watching out for her. And he's fucking awesome. I love him in this movie.
Yeah.
And a couple of the other actors really kind of flirt a little bit more with caricature, like his deputy Cologne, Rick Cologne is his name. I don't know if they mention his last name in the movie, but it is Rick Cologne. He's a little cheesy, isn't he?
Yeah, he's got the laser sight, his mail order laser sight, which he obviously doesn't understand because he's like, where the red light goes, kaboom boom or whatever. And it's like,
you bang.
You bang. Yeah, thank you. It's like, look, dude, first, I don't know if you know how parallel lines work, but no. You might get close at a distance, but it's not set up that way.
But you know what? It was the mid 80s. And in the mid 80s, we thought lasers could do
they were
anything.
laser sights were not a thing that had been overdone yet. So yeah, seeing someone with a laser sight was like, this guy means business.
Yeah.
The lasers are very accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, anything that had to do with lasers, we just collectively as humanity just sort of like stared at with our jaws on the ground, just like in pure amazement and wonder.
He's got like a relationship with Megan that feels like they've been around each other for a long time, which is odd when she like breaks Tommy out of jail because he's just like, Megan, you're making a bad move. It'd be like, listen to me. You trust me. We've known each other for a very long time. This man has probably murdered several people. Please don't do this. You listen to Reese, not
Right.
just like you're making a boo-boo error, Megan.
Yeah. Or he could at least say, like, I don't want to get fired. Like, I'm going to get fired if you do this,
Right.
let alone you get killed.
Let-
Apparently you don't care about that.
I want to just talk about that jailbreak real quick, because that is a weird scene. Because yes, for the 8th time, the dad has been like, leave that guy alone, but you can sit in here with him for a while. So like they're just kind of all sitting there silently. It's those two and Rick. And she's got this big sketch pad. Now she shows him some writing, right?
Yeah.
And you can't see what it says. I got like gold toed off of like what few letters you could see essentially. And, Tommy's like, no, I'm not doing that. She's like, come on, do it. So then, she goes back. So then like, he's like, hey, what are you drawing there? Rick's like, shut up, both of you guys. He's like, I'm just asking her a question. And she shows him. She's like, this is what I'm drawing. What do you think? He's like, I think it sucks. And then like she gets up and then they kiss. And I'm like, what the fuck was written on that paper? Like it's so like there's so much that goes on.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like cause a distraction or, it doesn't seem like something very basic she wrote. There seems to be a lot of writing when she flips it. So I'm just like, and she seems shocked that he's kissing her. So I'm like, okay, so she obviously didn't say, get me over there and kiss me or something, So
Right.
it's just like, what the fuck was the plan? Because it seems to be no plan.
Right. Yeah. Because you're right. It's whatever happened after she showed him that note that she wrote on the paper. It seems like that note would have had to be a lot more intricate than it was, and for all of those things to take place afterward.
Right. Like a 5-step plan.
Right. And yeah, it's kind of
insult my drawings. I'll get mad.
Yeah.
I'll
come
throw
over
my
there.
book at you and come over to get it. When I do, kiss me, because it's all I've thought about since the
Right.
second I laid eyes on you.
And then she's sort of surprised at how he's kissing her back. And then he's sort of surprised at how much she's kissing him back.
And something my daughter pointed out, they're both terrible kissers.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. They don't have the best equipment to start with. I mean, you gotta have a nice set of thick lips.
I mean,
there.
you can say, it's awkward at the beginning, but then when they're like, oh, we're kissing for real now, it's almost worse then.
Right.
But yeah, then they like, she pulls Rick's gun on him when he comes to break him up, and then they lock Rick up and she takes off with a fugitive. Because I do love this too. The reason she goes to get him, as I said before, he calls the station. Now, the cop has already been like, get the fuck out of my town. I don't ever want to see you, hear from you again. Get out.
Yeah, he says that about 10 different ways.
Yeah. To where he literally drives him to the border and says, go. Because he tried following him and he didn't do it the first time. So he's like, he literally made him leave town. So then the next interaction Tommy has with him is when he calls the station. He gets Megan instead, but he's like, because he's been looking up stuff on the occult and he's like, to figure out how to defeat Jason. And he's like, hey, it's, and she's like, hey, Tommy, it's me, Megan. Remember from this morning? He's like, yeah, listen, I was wanting to talk to your dad because I've got a plan, but I need to buy some stuff. Like, was he calling the police station to be like, I know you want me out, but I need like your Menards card?
Yeah. Right. Like, what was going to happen if the sheriff had answered? Like, what did he think the sheriff was going to say? Like, after the 15th time of considering this.
Yeah. You hadn't asked for money before.
Right.
You should have started with that. Of course.
No,
what
you're right.
do you need? Chains and a padlock? Because you're going to drag the zombie to the depths of the lake? Of course.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You had my interest. Now you have my attention. You just needed to put that fine point on it. Now I'm all about it. No, you're right. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's kind of a convention.
It's such a
Now what's interesting.
I don't even care.
That scene did prompt some future behavior in my life for a good couple of years after that, where before Megan gets the phone call, she's doing the balance on the chair when you have like the 4-legged chair, which I guess most chairs are, but she's balancing back. And I used to do that in school. Did you ever do that where you try to balance on the back?
Try to balance on the back too.
Oh man, one time I fell back and smacked my head on the desk behind me, and that absolutely sucked. But no, I for years after, because of that movie in particular, I was always trying to balance in class. But
it doesn't bother Megan when she falls down, because when she pops back up, she's smiling, Tim.
Oh yeah,
nothing can get Megan down.
No, she's talking to Tommy. I mean, what could go
she was
wrong?
smiling before she picked up the phone, though. Then she
true.
She just got wet after that. A lot of vagina jokes in this movie. Well, there's one scene actually,
and vagina close up.
Yeah, there's a vagina close up. There's a couple, because she's racing Tommy back to the camp to do his ritual or ceremony or whatever. It's not even that. It's just he just has to return him to the place from whence he came. Is essentially what his plan to do with Jason. But yeah, she's like, you have to hide. So she puts his head in her lap. There's just a total close up on her vagina, and Tommy's like, okay, I'm cool with this. And then she's got her lines are like, she sees the sign for the camp, and she's like, no, that's what I was looking for. And then, but his face as she's turning, like, keeps getting closer to vagina. Hold on, this is going to be a real hairy turn. Which probably Tommy was like, oh, it is? All right, never, I'm out.
Which if you as a kid, when you're watching this and you don't have like the most thorough understanding of female genitalia, like you're thinking that his face is just all up in it, when in actuality, it's probably more like lower abdomen, mean, you'd really have to get acrobatic to really get your face into some vagina.
From a tight sitting, like car seated position.
Right.
Nothing's happening there.
No. It's almost as bad as the oral sex scene in Sleepaway Camp 2. Where you remember that, where like she's in the bathroom stall and the guy with the kind of reddish hair is basically like he's just like his stomach. Yes. But it's supposed to be oral sex of some sort. But hey, they did what they could. But no, what you're talking about though, you mentioned one thing about needing to return Jason back to the place where he originally died. That was kind of a conscious decision that the writer director Tom McLoughlin made, where he went back and when he watched all these Friday movies, he said to himself, like, what's the thing that these movies are really missing? And he felt like, obviously being a big fan of those Universal movies, there's a lot of those movies had mythology. Like there's a huge mythology to Dracula. There's a huge mythology to the Wolfman. And there's like rules and things like that. And actually Kevin Williamson who wrote Scream actually told Tom McLoughlin years later that part 6 was kind of an inspiration for a lot of Scream, like the idea of there being like rules or mythology or that sort of thing. It's a little bit of a stretch, but meta. That's what Tom said anyhow. But yeah, he liked the idea of like bringing about and infusing the Friday movies with some sort of occult mythology, some sort of mysticism, because prior to that, it's all been pretty human, like the whole way through the franchise.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's not like the tightest theory in the world that you apparently like. Okay. So first of all, Tommy just,
it also doesn't work. Like he doesn't die.
And he just finds these books in Georgia, like rural Georgia, or wherever they're supposed to be. But apparently, he's a very quick skimmer.
Well, maybe that's the point of it, is it is a last ditch effort and it doesn't work. Like there's no stopping him now. Like you can only just temporarily put him on pause in between films.
Yes. And what's really, really exciting is that, and I don't know exactly where this is, but skipping ahead just real quick, just because it's a fun fact, at the end of the movie, the last scene that we have where, like you're saying, he's not stopped, we have Jason anchored underwater with this chain around his neck, and it's holding him down, and he's just sort of floating in the middle of the lake. There actually, I wish I had written down what city it's in, but there was somebody that went to a very like strong effort to make a perfectly life-sized replica of Jason and sunk them in a lake, in their local lake. So somewhere out there, somebody's going to be like amateur scuba diving, and Jason's going to be hanging out down there just waiting.
Did you read about where they shot that scene though? It was in the director's dad's pool.
Yes.
And they fucked the pool filter up because they end up, Megan is in the water now. They're kind of all fighting, and she starts the boat motor and is able to, bring it across Jason's neck. That stops him essentially. They did that in his parents' pool. His mom flipped out because they destroyed like the filter, like the whole system. But the dad was just like, that's fucking awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
But isn't it so freaking awesome in that scene where, that motor is kind of like jamming away on Jason and his body is shaking and everything and his fingers are going nuts and he's just getting sawn and you're just kind of imagining whatever viscera or damage is happening. And then it just hits that one spot and his neck just cracks. And that's where you get that real blood, that dark stuff, that chunky stuff coming up. Oh, it's badass. It's cool.
It is. It's a good kill.
And that whole scene, I just want to say real quick, that whole moment, I think something that really saves this movie, not that it needed saving before this, but it does bring it back to the camp. It does raise those stakes like you're talking about, where we literally have scenes of Jason walking into a cabin filled with children. Yeah. And it's creepy. And
dude, he is inches from, because our main child, Nancy.
Yeah.
Because he is ready to pounce. She's doing the like Lord's Prayer, and then he hears a noise outside and goes to that. And I'm like, oh, birth of a religious fanatic right there. Like, my prayer saved me like that. There's no other explanation to that. And I'm going to be saying this the rest of my life.
Right. They actually did cut the scene where when Tommy spits up water, like when Megan, sort of gets him out of the water and is giving him CPR mouth to mouth, and he does spit up the water. Originally it was going to cut back to that little girl, Nancy, and she does like a thank you, like up to the sky with a point, like a mouth, like thanks Jesus. But thankfully they cut that. Yeah, because I know that you would have that might have changed your entire opinion.
Plummeting down my list. Yeah.
but yeah, thankfully they did cut that. But speaking now we cannot wrap this up at all without talking about something that you don't see in this movie that is really interesting. There was an epilogue written that was supposed to be the final shot of this movie, which, as I've mentioned before, Tom McLoughlin is looking to add things and bring things to the franchise and revitalize it. And the one thing that he thought had never been mentioned in any of the movies was Jason's father. So there is actually a series of storyboards that you can still see that still exist of Elias Voorhees, who is described as a sort of Rasputian character.
Okay.
And he, in the original script, Marvin, the caretaker, does not die. So the last thing that you see is this sort of mysterious, like long-haired, bearded character come to the graveyard, hand some money to Marvin, and it's sort of implying that this kind of person from afar has always, making sure that Jason's grave was taken care of and undisturbed.
Okay.
And
that explains that at least.
Yeah. And it kind of, now I don't know how they intended for this to come across to the audience, but it's almost supposed to imply that there is something about this father character that is, I don't know if I want to say magical, but definitely evil. And it's supposed to be where Jason gets his mojo from.
Right. I'm glad they left that out.
They did. And it was Frank Mancuso Jr. that did it. And he said, he's like, you know what? I get it. I like it. I think it's cool. But
and he sold the idea to the Halloween franchise for like $10 million. It's a great idea we were going to use, but I don't know if we're going to be able to. You guys want it?
Yeah, right. Right. Or it was also kind of called Great Expectations, just somebody sort of financing from afar for all these years. But either way,
dude, I'm glad you said that, because I'm glad they didn't do it, because something I liked that they had the opportunity to do was to make like Tommy Jarvis more than he is, to start like expounding on their relationship. And it's some sort of like eternal, endless eternal struggle between these two things. And maybe there's more to Tommy Jarvis's background. I'm so glad they didn't do that. And that's why I really fear, I wanted Tommy to die in this one.
Ooh.
I think he should have. I think Tommy should have died. And I do fear if they make more, them bringing him back, because that is exactly what they will do. I guarantee you. If Tommy Jarvis comes back, it's because there is some sort of deeper connection between the two that we've never known before. And I'm really afraid of that.
Well, that makes one of us then, because I would love nothing more than to see Tommy come back.
I would love Tommy back.
Yeah,
that would be great. But I just fear that's what they would do with it, which I would hate.
That there'd be some sort of connection between Tommy and
that it would start doing shit like that, like this Rasputin thing or something, or
right, or that they're actually
that it's not just a kid who fucking suffered this awful trauma when he was a child and can't get over it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think I mentioned it before.
Someone starts a cult because of Tom. You could still do the same crap Halloween did. Right. That's the other thing I fear. They'll just take shit that hasn't worked and try and do it.
Yeah, like it, just as long as they don't incorporate the internet. Like those are the worst. Like somehow like incorporate like
oh my God, what is it? Jason's gone digital.
Right. Yeah, we don't need that.
Don't download that file.
Yeah, we don't need Jason trapped. Oh, now he's everywhere.
Oh God.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Are you using your cell phone?
Right. Yeah, I don't know how they would go about it. I know, like, I think I've mentioned it before. Stephen King says that he has a story ready to go, that he has a story ready and that he is super excited about it. I don't know.
Tim, I don't know if you know much about Stephen King's movies, but that does not make me excited at all.
No. Yeah. Jason driving.
That's like the worst news ever.
Jason driving like a possessed semi down the road.
Yeah.
Like,
what if Jason were a shape-shifting soul sucker?
Right.
Who hates Trump? That's one of Jason's main features. He hates Trump.
Yeah. There are probably more bad ways that they can take this than good. So I don't know. Bring Tom McLoughlin back. He figured it out the first time around. With this. I am down. I would love to watch more of this guy's stuff because I like his style. He's able to solve issues that he has through directing that I really enjoy. I like his humor. I think it's just enough in just the right amount of doses. I guess I was just saying just enough twice, but you know what I'm saying. But and he gave us the cool thing is that we are talking about all these new things that he's bringing, but he still gave us what we wanted as Friday fans. I mean, for God's sake, you get not one, not two, you get 3 Jason leaps from the water onto the boat. Yes. I mean, he knows that you got to have it. And by the way, that scene is set up beautifully with the sort of ring of fire on the lake and Tommy waiting for Jason to pop out. Really, really great setup there at the campground at the end. But yeah, he's giving us everything that we want. And I really feel like this was the end. This was the end of this franchise as we know it. I mean, we know that
an ironic title.
Right. Yeah.
But to me, this was the last one.
It was part 7. I remember, I'll be honest.
I'm going to be honest. Never saw it. 7 is one I never saw because I don't want to.
Well, it's funny you mention that because I know here I am talking about being like some sort of ultimate Friday fan. I know that there are Friday movies that I haven't seen. Like I did see 7. I did see 8. I think I saw the one where he's jumping in and out of bodies.
Oh, Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, I think I saw that. I don't know if I
saw that in the theater.
I don't think I saw all of the space one because I'll tell you, I got to a point where somebody might say like, oh, how can you say you're an ultimate Jason fan if you didn't see all the movies? It just got so disheartening after a couple installments. I mean, 7 sucked, 8 sucked, 9 sucked. And then it's like, well, why would I put myself through this? It's not
Freddy versus Jason.
That should have been way fucking better. Way fucking better.
It should have. And the only thing that's ever remembered from that movie is like Kelly Rowland just throwing out a gay slur, like a hard gay slur.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Like it's the only thing people remember from that movie.
Right. Yeah. Because even like they talk about the fight at the end, but even that isn't as great as they say that it is. And it's, yeah, I mean, I think that, if there's any sort of blessing to this stuff getting tied up in the courts for so long, maybe it's that there's been enough time here for somebody to come up with a really genuinely good idea and start fresh. But that's the tricky part. It's not, these movies aren't all about just reinventing the wheel and starting with something completely different. You still have to incorporate those elements that we're looking for. You know? So it's not an easy job.
No,
but
he did it. He went out on top. Yeah. Okay, so what's better, 4 or 6?
Okay, that's the burning question. And
let's wrap up hour 2 with what's better, 4 or 6.
Okay.
1 year anniversary. Woo!
I'm going to say this. I'll say 6. I will.
Wow.
And that decision to say 6, I think I thought of it literally this morning because I've been wrestling with this for weeks now. And I really, I'll say this with this only exception that, like I said earlier, I think that 6 might lack a little bit of that rawness and that danger that those earlier films had, and that 4 certainly has. I mean, 4 is scary in a lot of ways, but I think as an overall experience, 6 probably edges it out as the complete package of a Friday the 13th. I mean, for everything that you're looking for, and even what you didn't know you were looking for, 6 is the total package.
Yeah, I thought about that too, because I agree. I think 6 is, but there are definite, like, there's so much from 4 that I'm just like, oh, I wish if just a couple of those elements were in this. And I think what sets the 2 apart is, and I think what pushes 6 ahead for me is 4, while great, the characters are fantastic, the kills are good, it is still kind of a formula. Not to say this movie doesn't follow formula. I think 4 follows more of a formula of a Friday movie. 6, because everyone is aware of Jason at the beginning. Like all the movies are always, no one knows about him until the very end where you discover everyone's dead. You're like, holy shit, there's a killer here. This movie starts with, hey, there's a killer here.
Right.
So it's more,
urgent.
Yeah, it is more urgent. More people know about it. It's just not just here's a series of kills until we get to the final battle. So I think that's what stands out. I think the humor stands out for me. It's just a lot of stuff I would normally hate that I just love in this movie. And I don't know. I love this movie.
Yeah, it's great. It's a super recommended.
4 is so close behind. It's such a.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. The only thing that you could maybe, there's a slight lull in 4, and it's kind of ironic because it might not even be a bad thing, but there's, how if you're at like a house party and like it was super fun and everybody's having a good time and everything was raging, and then it gets to be a little bit later on at night and some people have left or some people, have gone upstairs to go to bed or whatever, and you just kind of feel that fun factor die down a little bit. Like that actually happens in that movie, but it sort of happens in that moment of the night. So, I mean, maybe they just captured it perfectly, but there's a little bit of a weird lull there where things, like Teddy's just getting high on the couch. He's watching those movies. I mean, there's just a slight lull there, but really 4 is great. I think 4 is the best of sort of the like Friday in its pure essence form. Yeah. But as far as if we're talking about a total overall experience,
it's the best like world building movie. Like it gives you the richest lore. You've got relatives of victims. You've got, a kid who connects or tries to connect with him in order to defeat him.
And there's enough mention. Usually it's lines that come from the sheriff, but there's enough mention of Jason and Tommy's past that if one of the rare people out there that have never seen a Friday the 13th movie, you could watch this movie standalone. I think that you could. I mean, you'd miss out on a couple of the references.
Yeah, I showed my kid the end scene from 4. I'm like, just so you kind of know who Tommy Jarvis is. Like, this is all you really got to see. Like, these two have a history, but that's it.
Yeah, it's a standalone movie, and it works. It works great with the rest of the franchise, but it also, works as its own film. So,
because this is like a movie. This is like what was the one I was thinking of? Urban legend, or it's like an urban legend. Like Jason himself is an urban legend. So I could see a movie where replace Jason with, Mustache Man or whoever your urban legend is, to where a guy shows up and says, hey, Mustache Man is coming back. And there is a town and they have a history with Mustache Man. And then Mr. Mustache Man is back. Like that's a movie that could exist. And that's kind of what this is. Just Jason is that.
Yes.
Guy. So yeah, it's like its own stand. This could be the start of a franchise, and essentially was a terrible franchise.
right.
6 through 11 or whatever it is.
Yeah. But I'm glad that we covered this. And like you said, there's only a handful more that we would want to cover. But yeah, we've done 4, we've done 6, and that's the top of the heap right there.
Yeah. And I think it says a lot to where I know we're going to get done with this and be like, fuck, I forgot. I wanted to mention this.
Oh.
And we've only talked about this for a half hour more than the movie is. So
right. Yeah, no, we could go on and on and on, but yeah, it's a super recommend from me. I feel like it is from you as well.
Yes, super recommend.
And it's excellent.
And if you're apprehensive, so it's not gory. Like, there is blood, but you're not seeing necks split open. You're hearing it and imagining it, but it's, it's tame for what you would expect to see if you are apprehensive. Please go watch this movie. I made a deal where I get a bonus if you watch this movie.
Yeah, I get a swamp cooler. If you watch this movie.
Oh, I can't wait to go back and watch
You get a swamp cooler and you get a swamp cooler.
They don't tell you had to pay taxes on the swamp cooler.
Oh, that's
all right. Well, that was from 1986. Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, Part 6. Tim, next week, we're going to switch it up here a little bit. We're going to do a movie from 2018. It's an English movie called Possum. It's going to be very different than this one, that's for sure. Yeah. I only saw the trailer. It's one of those trailers where you're just like, what is this? So we'll see.
It's
do you have some apprehension going into it?
You're not gonna mistake it for, you're not gonna get Friday the 13th Part 6 confused with Possum. Let's just say that.
No.
Yeah. Also no nudity.
No. Thankfully.
But yeah, it's I've got a lot to say about that movie. It was I'll be honest. I did go into it with some apprehension. I'm not the biggest fan of psychological horror. But I tried to be open-minded and take it for whatever it is. And what it is interesting. So excited to talk about it.
Can't wait. I can't wait till next week. Can't believe I got to wait a whole week to talk about it. All right. So that was cool. This is a happy 1-year anniversary, Tim. Please follow us on Instagram at Slumber Podcast Massacre. Our email is slumberpodcast@gmail.com. Patreon.com/Slumber Podcast Massacre. A huge thanks to our patrons. You help make the show possible. We couldn't do it without you. Tim, is there anything else to say about Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives?
Well, this just came to me, but if anybody out there listening, any patrons have any sort of talent in merchandising and you'd like to put together some Slumber Podcast Massacre earrings in the shape of testicles, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a winner, and I hope that we're together long enough to talk about a third Balls as Earrings movie.
There's got to be one out there somewhere.
We'll find it.
All right, Timmy, we'll see you later.
See you later. Thanks for a wonderful year.
Happy anniversary. I love you, Tim.
Woo, love you too. Horror movies.
Oh, awesome.